I'm a journalist by training, and I tell the stories of people's lives. As the saying goes, journalists have a front row seat to history. And in a lot of ways, that's true. But today, I'm going to take you back in time to the not so distant past. Everyone's favorite year. That's right, the year 2020. And one of the main events of 2020 was the COVID-19 pandemic. Fortunately, pandemics are typically a once-in-a-lifetime event, and hopefully it stays that way, but it's safe to say that COVID-19 is unlike anything we've ever seen before. Our lives were completely turned upside down. We were sent home to work and study, while many people lost their jobs, and frontline workers were placed in impossible situations. We were so unaccustomed to being in constant survival mode that the fear and loss seemed larger than life. But despite all that COVID-19 has taken from us, it has also presented us with opportunity. The pandemic forced us outside our comfort zone, challenged us to adapt to our new circumstances, and guided our communities to unite towards a common cause. One opportunity that the pandemic granted us was the ability to take a step back and see that our lives before the pandemic weren't working for everyone. Our typical lifestyle had us running around at 100 miles per hour while being stressed, burnt out, and exhausted, trying to squeeze every second out of each day. Work and school requirements weren't meeting the needs of family and personal lives. Society was leaving people out and looking down on certain occupations that turned out to be way more critical than we ever realized. And then COVID-19 happened, and that new normal wasn't especially great either. Sure, some of us enjoyed being able to work from home, while others of us were basically drowning as they struggled to balance homeschooling and childcare with work and other responsibilities. And not everyone even had the luxury to stay at home. Essential workers had to keep showing up in person and putting themselves at risk. Our students missed out on critical academic support and time with friends. Marginalized groups were still left out and even more at risk. Not to mention that while all of this was going on, we were isolated and in constant fear for our health and well-being. We're now a year into the pandemic, and we're all exhausted, right? We're tired of staying home, we're tired of avoiding our friends and family, and we're tired of waiting for the storm to pass. Everyone is truly in a rush to get back to normal. But what if we slowed down for a minute, reflected on the last year, and considered that maybe going back to normal the way that it was isn't necessarily the best thing for us? What if we took this opportunity to take the lessons that we've learned and use them to create our own ideal post-COVID normal? Think about it. COVID-19 forced us to shift our perspective, to become flexible thinkers and problem solvers, and to consider alternative options. Now is the time to consider what we want and need in our lives to accommodate our own individual situations. Not only do we have the tools to fix things, we have the power. Now is the time to create a normal that can work for everyone. Now, part of our reflection process should include reminding ourselves not to take life for granted. This past year has shown us how fragile life is. But life didn't stop just because we were physically distanced or at home. Instead, we had to ask ourselves, what can we do instead? How can we make the most of this time and find the joy in each day? Perhaps we found ways to be together again. present and in the moment without distractions. We certainly all appreciate our family and friends more now that we've had to stay away from them, right? We shouldn't forget these simpler times. The world has a lot to offer, at least when you can go out in public safely. But it's the people you care about that truly make life enjoyable. So to help you live life to the fullest, there are 3 key areas in which lessons from the pandemic can help us reshape our approaches to life. Those key areas are survival techniques, create the world we want to live in, and control your own destiny. These key areas are ways for us to survive and thrive in any future. We'll start with survival techniques, which is all about finding ways to cope with difficult situations. Survival technique number 1 is leave room for your feelings. Self-care is crucial during a pandemic and always. You must give yourself space to feel your emotions in order to manage them in a healthy way. Conversely, ignoring your feelings is one of the worst things you can do for yourself in terms of survival. Once you take care of your mental health and acknowledge where you are, that's when you can start to build resilience. This past year, many of us experienced fatigue, despair, overwhelming fear and anxiety, and other feelings that were perhaps new to us, or were added on to already existing mental health challenges. The news coverage of our mental health painted a picture of struggle, but also one of incredible resilience. In fact, the ways in which we handled our emotional overload were actually fairly effective. We took time to rest when we got overwhelmed. We let things in our work and personal lives be good enough rather than trying to overachieve. And we all openly expressed how we were feeling. The grace we gave ourselves during the pandemic is something that we should be prepared to extend during so-called normal times. If nothing else, we've learned that we're not robots, and perhaps the pace we used to push ourselves on isn't sustainable. Allowing ourselves time to take a step back when the world gets to be too much is sometimes just what we need to push forward. Survival technique number 2 is be prepared. Now, when I say be prepared, I don't just mean stocking up on toilet paper and pasta, although we definitely found out how important that was this year. But in this case, be prepared means looking ahead in order to be adaptive and innovative in the moment. Being quick on your feet and willing to change your game makes a huge difference in how well you thrive in difficult times. We saw a lot of examples of this in businesses as they struggled to survive the shutdowns and the loss of revenue. The National Restaurant Association reported that as of December 2020, 110,000 restaurants in the United States were closed either permanently or long-term due to COVID-19. Those that were able to stay open had to be creative, and the news was always featuring stories of those restaurants that were truly thinking outside the box. Other businesses stepped up their game as well. Gyms offered virtual and outdoor workout classes, and companies upgraded their technology to allow people to work from home. Schools figured out online learning, and businesses even pivoted their manufacturing to make the much-needed masks, hand sanitizer, and PPE. While these shifts didn't come without their challenges, being open and willing to change course meant that more businesses could stay open and meet the needs of their communities. The takeaway here is simple. We must continue to be introspective and adaptive to our environments. You have to ask yourself, what needs to be done? And what are the alternate ways of making it happen? The pandemic proved there's always more than one way to accomplish the same thing. We're now on to key area number 2, which is create the world that we want to live in. 2020 was truly a year of taking care of each other. It started with wearing masks and social distancing, and it evolved into sharing resources, checking in on each other, and protesting for justice. Those actions were critical to getting us all through. Amidst the wall-to-wall news coverage of sickness and fear, we saw stories of people who were inspired to take action, to be of service, and to spread positivity. While that was so uplifting for us to see, the pandemic exposed major cracks in our society. Those who live paycheck to paycheck are still on the brink. Systemic racism is still a problem, and essential workers are still being used and abused. Seeing these cracks so clearly makes it all the more important for us to fix them, and it should be easier when they're in plain view for all to see. We can all be a part of stabilizing these cracks, and we don't have to do it alone. Relying on each other means that we can all make progress forward. We each just have to do our own part in any way that we can. This past year, we were stronger together, even when that meant staying apart. When we were united, that was the best of ourselves shining through. There was hope because we had each other. Isn't that the future we all hoped for? That goodness is still inside of us all, and we don't have to lose it once this is all over. The pandemic only highlighted its existence. It's up to us to keep the light on. Finally, we're on to key area number 3, which is control your own destiny. The pandemic has been leaving us feeling powerless and vulnerable, especially when it comes to building our future. The good news is, we can take our power back. We've been in a time where we've had to ask ourselves, how can we make progress on our goals now, in this pandemic environment, by being open and willing to try something different? Now that flexible thinking isn't just reserved for a crisis. Back in survival techniques, I mentioned how we've been in a time of creating solutions to make things work, and anything was fair game. Living our lives the way we always have isn't applicable anymore. And what we found was different and sometimes better options. The same can be true when it comes to meeting your goals in the future. In fact, the more flexible you are about your methods, the more likely it is that you'll reach your goals. So I'd like for everyone here to think about something that you would like to accomplish. This can be a career goal, a personal milestone, or a passion project. Okay? Consider how you might traditionally go about reaching that goal. And then I want you to cut that mindset off. Instead, I want you to brainstorm the alternative methods, the ways that might seem different, but could ultimately be effective. Give those a try. You might be surprised. By letting go of old expectations and refusing to limit ourselves, we can continue to shape our own paths, rather than letting our narratives be decided for us. So we now have these 3 key areas: survival techniques, create the world we want to live in, and control your own destiny. And we have some idea of how to apply them. But how do we take all of that and use it to create our own ideal post-COVID normal? The beauty of it is, we all come from our own individual circumstances, and there is no one right solution. But there doesn't need to be. We can each create our own right solution. The first place to start is with yourself. Consider what is and isn't working in your life, and how you might go about trying to change that in the future. Don't limit yourself here. Anything and everything is on the table. From there, keep your eyes peeled and look out for those solutions. They may just present themselves to you when you least expect it. In the past, we've gotten so stuck in our ways of doing things that we've forgotten how to experiment. We've tried to make the world one size fits all, when that one size doesn't even fit most. But the pandemic gave us this incredible gift, the opportunity to switch things up. COVID-19 taught us not just who we are, but who we can be. So be open and ask for what you want. Grant yourself and others the ability to chase your best life. The possibilities are endless, so move forward boldly. In the future, when journalists and historians tell the stories of our lives in the year 2020, they'll tell the stories of how we evolved and grew. So what will your story be? You have the power to craft it and be on the stage of history as the world changes. And I hope you seize it with both hands. Thank you.